if I looked at the search term like women's pink rubber coated insulated water bottle, like that's my exact product. Now, the more specific you get to the product, the more specific the search is, the lower your search volume is going to be. So what we always look to do on product launches is like we try and find the intersection between good search volume, and good to us is like maybe even a couple thousand, depending on the budget, that also have really good relevancy to the product. Because what you're trying to do is you want to get in front of your exact shoppers. So example would be insulated water bottle is going to be really expensive and not super specific to my product. Like it's kind of specific, but not really specific. I'm trying to say like, okay, where can I start getting super specific to my product, but it's going to have enough search volume that I can get the sales volume that I need. So I would focus more on that versus that I would looking at only search volume. A bit of a technical answer here is we don't quote move them, meaning we're not going to pause the existing keywords. We're simply going to launch them in another match type. Again, make sure to keep the bids lower. Amazon actually, if you read their recommendations, they recommend keeping bids lower on broad and phrase match, even lower than the exact match. When we would launch those is honestly really dependent performance of the account and availability of the budget. So if you launch a keyword in exact phrase and broad, so you have 50 keywords, right? And you launch them in exact phrase and broad, you technically have, 150 keywords that you've launched. And the potential of broad and phrase to spend could be quite high. So again, you just want to make sure it makes sense. It seems super simplistic, but if you are in a phase where you're struggling to control total ACoS and ACoS, to fix those two numbers, it really means that you have to lower down your ad spend with ideally little to no impact of the total sales or the ad sales in the case of ACoS. If you introduce a whole, again, those 50 keywords in exact phrase and broad, and those you probably need to test and optimize the bids, etc., you're introducing a lot of additional ad spend into the account. So you do want to be aware of that and be careful with that. So that's kind of a benchmark that we use. But overall, I would say, I don't know if I would have like a certain time frame or a frame which I would hold back on. It really is dependent on the performance of the account. Another good question, which best bid strategy for phrase and exacts when you move? So again, we don't really move them. We would simply launch them in addition. We like to separate them by campaign as well. I think it gives us a little bit more control over, say, budgets for things. Now, as far as the bidding strategy, we're a super huge fan of using mainly dynamic down only. If it is a keyword that we want to ensure that we get impressions for, so for our launch keywords, for our main keywords, for anything we're trying to be aggressive with, we prefer a fixed bidding strategy. It's still going to be the same. It's still going to be pick highly relevant keywords. One other tip is pick keywords that fit within the budget of the account that you're launching. So for instance, if I have a couple $100 a day budget versus $50 a day budget, those launches are actually going to look a little bit different because I can't afford that many clicks on a $50 a day budget. Or if I had, a couple $100 or $1,000, I have a lot more room for clicks. So actually, you want budgets to play into your launch strategy. The other thing that you want to keep in mind, do not expect profitability on launch. This is a huge one. There's a lot of people that try and pull back and knee-jerk for profitability right out of the gate. That is not going to happen. The reason why it's not going to happen, and I'll tell you the numbers behind the numbers, is that ACoS is just going to be high on your product launches, and that is a function of two things. One, the aggressive cost per click you have to set to be able to get visibility in the beginning, and two, how low your product conversion rate is going to be, especially if you're launching without reviews. Those two things, once you start to be able to bring your cost per clicks down because you gain momentum or you're optimizing your bids, and then two, once your product conversion rate starts to increase because you're getting those reviews, maybe you're optimizing your listing a little bit more because you've learned more about your target market, that is going to help bring down your target ACoS. So those things, again, conversion rates is going to be low, high cost per clicks. That's actually like the nuts and bolts of why your ads are not profitable, and it's almost unreasonable to expect profitability in the beginning. And that's actually why, if you've ever had a product where you're like, no matter what I do, I cannot seem to bring the ACoS down, struggling here, it's a function of that your conversion rate is remaining low and it's not improving, and your cost per clicks are remaining high and you're not able to improve them due to the market or something else. So again, I would still say pick highly relevant keywords, Also, make sure that whatever keywords that you have fits within your budget. Launch them. Aggressive, sponsored products, exact match, potentially sponsored brands video, exact match if you have the creative. Double down on that for a couple weeks and then start expanding from there. Hello, and welcome back to another Ask Junglr section. So in these sessions, what we do, show up for an hour, allow you to type your Amazon ad questions in the chat. So wherever you are streaming this live, be it Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, or if you're watching the replay, feel free to drop a Amazon ad question into the chat. We will bring it up on screen and we will get your questions answered. But hey, so my name is Elizabeth Greene. I'm one of the co-founders of an Amazon ad agency called Junglr, and we're focused on helping founder-led growth focused brands hit the next level through strategic tailored Amazon ad strategies. And with that, I'm going to quickly pull up. If you're interested in learning more about us, of course, check the website. But if you go to resources and Q&A, we're putting on these every single week. So you can see we're streaming live here. There also is, if you want to follow our Google Calendar, we even update the links to all of the different streams in there. We're putting this out as a podcast. So whatever way you want to listen, we hope that we have something that can help support you. So we are focused on allowing sellers to tune in and get very strategic and specific Amazon ad questions, or more specifically, answers to their questions. So I'm really excited, again, continuing the streak of having guests on this channel. I'm now going to bring up our new guest, if you've seen their social media posts. But this is Kevin Fischer from KPOC, which if you've been on a stream, you've probably heard me talk about them once or twice. So hey, Kevin, welcome.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me on. So just to introduce myself, I'm the president of KPOC. KPOC is an end-to-end solution for managing your Amazon presence. So we do everything from content management to advertising, customer experience, inventory management, and have very nice analytics and reporting capabilities that are all integrated into one software platform so that you can have interconnected alerts and analytics that combines information from your PPC advertising, your inventory, all of these different aspects of managing your brands.
Yeah. When anyone asks about like, oh, how do you use KPOC? Why do you guys use them? We're like, yeah, I concede that it is a platform built for full service management, which is good for brands. If you're looking to kind of get an all-in-one view of what your brand is doing, definitely a good solution. I recognize as an ad agency, it's probably a bit overkill, technically speaking, but there's so many things that touch advertising, meaning conversion rate changes, traffic changes, price changes, review changes, inventory changes being a huge one. Inventory is something that's on everybody's mind these days. And so, your tool, from what we've seen on the market, I think is one, just the most comprehensive solution to a lot of those out there. And then the other thing that I find is that the functionality is really good. That was something I was discussing with the team on one of our team calls the other day. I'm like, hey, it sounds like there's like 4 different ways to get to every single piece of information, or some tools it's like you have to go in here and find it this way. I find it very interconnected, which makes it very easy to find things and access things in whatever place you want to. So
that's high praise, Elizabeth. Thank you. That's the goal with KPOC, and I couldn't put it better.
Yeah, no, I know you guys are also rapidly developing solutions as well. So we definitely appreciate it. So now that you know who Kevin is, Kevin, also you wrote, or basically were in charge of writing the bid algorithm for KPOC. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So I'm kind of the guy behind most of our advertising logic. Not the only one, but initially when we started KPOC, I was the only one that was doing PPC logic. Now there's more, but yeah, I definitely anything about our bidder, I can go in the weeds for hours. So I probably should stop talking about it so that we can at some point take viewer questions and not not make your podcast be about the math of PPC automation.
No, I'm sure our listeners would be very excited to learn about. So yeah, Kevin is definitely in the weeds, and we've jammed out a lot on how does this work? How do you approach this? Like, he's definitely been at the forefront of piecing out not just like the general logic, but being as that you guys have a software, you have to think about every single outline use case. Because if you're doing things manually, you typically can, like, you do a manual input, you're like, oh, that's not what I would have done. You can in real time adjust it. When you're doing a software, if you don't think about the outliers, that's where it's going to get you. So Kevin's
That is so very true.
definitely thought through all of the outliers in this situation. So if you have a very tactical question, Kevin's going to be very helpful in this. So,
and I wouldn't say all of them, Elizabeth. The people always find new ones, and so
there's always
part of the fun of building these things. You think of a bunch of them, but in the real world, people find things that you never would have thought of.
True. Which is why it's great to have an audience like this. You get it real time, see what people are interested in. But Dante, who keeps joining in, we appreciate you coming back, Dante. So, hey, Elizabeth. Hey, I appreciate you joining. And Abdul saying happy to see. Yes, we're really happy to see you as well, and appreciate you tuning in. So we do have our first question from Joseph. Joseph's been awesome about showing up and asking questions. We talked about beforehand. You're like, hey, I know the data that's in bulk files, but I'm not really sure on on that. So the first question is on bulk files, so I can definitely pull out this one. But Kevin also has a lot of knowledge as far as what's available in the API. So if anyone has API questions, those are things I can't answer. I have a cursory understanding, but Kevin's very, very detailed in that as well. So again, offer is open to anyone. Drop your Amazon ad question in the chat. Kevin also has insights outside of just Amazon ads, so anything outside of that, I'll defer to you as well. But Joseph's question is, hey, in the bulk files, when I choose to have the search term report, I see that has a lot less rows in it versus a sponsored product tab, even when I only select keyword and product targeting. What am I missing? Yeah, my question would be, so are you comparing apples to apples in terms of date ranges? I would be interested to know that, because the search term tab is definitely dynamic there. And then in terms of rows, I'm trying to think. I don't think I've gone through that specific analysis versus the search term tab versus the search term report in bulk files. From my understanding, a search term report in a bulk file should be very similar to the search terms that you would find inside of a search term report. And then it's also segmented by particular product line. So, Joseph, I don't know if I have a very specific answer for you. But if you had any feedback on specific date ranges or anything, Jeff was saying, yeah, same report, same period, sales and spend data are both the same. Oh, that's interesting. So I know I'm looking at the same data. That's really interesting. So, search and report, a lot less rows, but data is the same. Yeah, I know it's aggregated. I wonder if there's anything that's aggregated in the bulk file that's not aggregated in the search term report. What I would do is I would actually see if you could cross-reference the two of them. I mean, if you really want to dig into it, really smart that you checked the spend and the sales. So that's helpful to know. Like, in some ways it is apples to apples. Your question is just like, what are the rows that are different? To do that, I think what I would do is I would aggregate in some way, unless Kevin, maybe you have a smarter way to do this. I think I would probably take the two reports, aggregate the, like the naming or the keyword, the match type and the search term, just so you could know you can compare apples to apples, make sure the naming is the same, and kind of do like a match formula just to see like what matches and what doesn't. And then that
I was going to say, checking the individual items makes sense. So if your totals are the same, it almost definitely means that things are getting aggregated at a different level. Or I guess there could be, like, you might have things that aren't showing up because there's zero spend in one of them or something like that. although I don't see how that would be showing in either of them. But
Yeah.
but if you look at the individual cases, you'll find ones that are different then, even though the totals don't match, because you just can't have a different number of rows where the total adds up.
Yeah, it would
If it's not
me,
different aggregation.
Yeah, it would seem to me at some point like some things would be combined unless the search term report, because well technically, yeah, I don't think the search term tab shows anything with 0 clicks, because by definition things that only gain impressions that haven't gained clicks don't show up as a search term, which would be interesting if they did, but I assume Amazon's trying to not have to put that.
No, that would make a very, very long report.
That would be a lot of data, which would make your job a lot harder when it comes to aggregation. Yeah, Joseph, if you do that analysis, or I'm super curious, I don't know if you want me to have access to your search term reports, but if you want me to do that analysis, I am curious enough to spend my afternoon trying to figure that out. So feel free to offline, depending on what you want, or feel free to do the analysis yourself. All right, we got one which might defer to your expertise more on listings than mine, but another question is, so this is in Junglr, the SEO manager doesn't want to edit the back end search terms, and also our conversion rate is 0.26. Ooh, that is low. POE is 1.4. We have done almost everything we can on PPC. The click-through rate and the conversion rate is low. And the other context is the product is jewelry. Other context, the auto pin campaign is just burning money. Is it a listing problem? That is a good question. Do you want to try and tackle that first, or do you have any?
Yeah, well, I'm assuming the conversion rate there, if it's 26% versus 0.26%, that's very different. I'm assuming 0.26% there. That I mean, if it's a fresh listing or something like that, that definitely points to a listing problem. I mean, obviously, compare your conversion rate, compare your organic conversion rate to the to what you're getting through advertising. I definitely, if your organic conversion rate looks okay and your advertising conversion rate is a lot lower than that, that could very well mean that your auto campaign is not hitting good search terms for you, and really that your targeting is off there, which definitely can happen. So I'd look at where you're actually surfacing and make sure it makes sense. I mean, auto campaigns, Amazon's deciding where you surface. But depending on what the product actually is, you could be surfacing on irrelevant searches and getting bad conversion rate because of that. So I would definitely look through there. Well, either way, no matter what that comparison between organic and ad conversion rate looks like, it's definitely worth it to do that, just because a 0.26 conversion rate is extremely low. If it's a very high price point product, you should expect low conversion rates. I don't know what kind of jewelry this is, and that really can run full spectrum. But that low of a rate, I definitely would look through your listing, make sure you have high quality listing. If it's a new product, it'll probably get better over time as you gather reviews and things like that. But at the same time, I think you have to, even if you're in that state, 0.26 is even a very low conversion rate, unless it's an extremely high price point item for like a new listing. But those are the steps that come to mind. And then obviously, if your auto campaign is burning money, one thing you definitely can do is try to make some manual campaigns on particular targets that are kind of the best of the bunch that you see on that are coming out of that auto campaign, and focus that ad spend a little bit on the stuff that's working.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Exactly what Kevin had said. So the one thing with auto campaigns, which Kevin basically said, like, hey, go in and see like what it is auto campaigns will really at the base, regardless if it's an auto, if it's a manual, what you are showing up on is the search terms. And so in that case, you really want to go and look into, Joseph had mentioned the search term tab. That's a great place to go. Like, hey, what search terms am I showing up on? Where am I getting clicks and are not translating to sales? Sometimes it's one or two search terms that are just really bleeding money. And in those cases, even if you think it's probably something to go after long term, you might just negate it for now to get rid of that bleeding, and then that sometimes can fix things. Other things you might find helpful, I agree with you that it's most likely a listing issue. One really helpful thing to do, so there's we have this video, it's like spy on competitors, 2 free game-changing tools. I'll give you the hint, the game-changing tools are brand metrics and search query performance report. But I actually go through those 2 things and like how to see if you're benchmarking against your competitors in your exact space. Because that's really, like Kevin was saying, like for high priced products, you can expect, especially in jewelry, and especially if you have no reviews in jewelry, you can expect to see lower conversion rates. I would agree, 0.14 is or 1.4 is pretty low. But really you want to say, okay, if my conversion rate is low, so for example, there's probably a lot of people in like say supplements or other high volume categories that hear 0.14 and they're like gasp. Like in clothing and jewelry, you can get somewhere between like a 5 to 2% on average. So on average, that category is a little bit lower due to people like shopping around. People, when they shop jewelry or clothing or other items like that, tend to have a very specific idea of what they want. And so they're looking for that thing, and so lower conversion rates. But again, the question I would ask is, are you keeping up with the market? And then in terms of what optimizations you were pinpointing in terms of the SEO, my personal opinion, and I just got off a conversation with John, who's recently moved to PickFu. And he was saying like, hey, SEO and a lot of like bullet points and things, while it's good to have those, that's for the robots. If your conversion rate's low, you need to optimize for humans, which typically means images. So I think in this case, if I'm dealing with low conversion rates, I would worry about images before I would really start working on. Is SEO going to be helpful? I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying I don't think that's going to make the biggest impact. Because you're not trying to convert robots. You're trying to convert shoppers. So I would optimize for that. Yeah,
that's very much true. I might have got my numbers backwards there. I thought it was a 0.26% conversion rate.
Which also, let's see what that was. Conversion rate is 0.26. Well, the average on PO. Okay, so maybe the average is 1.4 and he's a 0.26. I'm not sure. Either way.
But one other thing I'd add there, just because it's an auto campaign we were talking about. This probably isn't the issue, but on auto campaigns, it's really important to make sure that your bid is reasonable. So one thing that can happen is if you're trying to spend more through your auto campaign to promote the product and you set your bids high, unlike if you did that on an exact match manual campaign, you're actually going to start surfacing on different keywords or on different search terms, I should say, than you were before. And the new ones, as you raise your bid, get less and less relevant. Basically, you're like, as you raise that bid, you're telling Amazon, I really want to have a lot of people see this product. And a low bid, the places that you'll surface are going to be the things that Amazon thinks are the highest relevancy. As that goes up, you can start casting the net wider and wider. And so you'll actually see your conversion rate go down typically when you raise your bids on auto campaigns. There's obviously a happy medium there. You want to advertise, and you're not just trying to maximize ROAS with some tiny bid. But if you go excessively high, that's a bad state you can get into too.
Yeah, some more context on this, which I think we've already kind of put out, but confirming, yes, it is a 0.26 conversion rate, which is, very low. It was saying also the product is an old listing, no reviews and ratings. Yeah, so that's most likely hurting you in jewelry. The price point is, I'm assuming it's $14.99, or is it $1,499 maybe? I'm not sure.
That would explain the conversion rate.
Yeah, you're saying so I can see it either way. So at a very high price point, again, your conversion rate is going to be very low. So if it is over $1,000, close to $1,500, not many people are going to purchase. Of course, when you make a purchase, you ideally would be very profitable there. Problems with having no reviews in those cases is someone's like, if I'm spending this much, I want to be absolutely certain that I'm not getting a crap product, which reviews will speak to that. Now, sometimes if you have if it's a jewelry piece and it's a very unique item that somebody just absolutely has to have, then they might have no reviews. If you were talking on the lower end of $14.99, well, then having no reviews, people are like, at $15, is this thing gonna tarnish? I mean, I've gotten those rings before where I'm like, oh, this is gorgeous, and I wear it for like 2 days, and I'm like, I'm great, now I can never wear this thing again. It's like a one-time use piece because the thing tarnishes or the thing breaks, right? So you also deal with that end of the spectrum of on the lower price point, people might just think it's a crappy product.
Yeah.
You know, am I getting a cheap Temu product at an Amazon price? Like, that's the worry at the lower price point. So in those cases, reviews would help, but you're saying no infographics, lifestyle images, those things will help. So if you can call out, like, if it's a high price product, you know, the premiumness of the product, and then otherwise, if you can showcase, you know, like, hey, this doesn't tarnish, you can wear it in the water. Maybe you can't, but I would look at those kind of things.
I'd also say if you have no reviews and no ratings, just make sure you're sending review requests on all the orders.
Yeah.
I mean, with a 0.26% conversion rate, there probably aren't a mountain of orders, but even getting one review in there will, or even one rating will make a big difference in terms of the product appearing legitimate and high quality.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Joseph had some other interesting insights on the differences. Honestly, I expect the opposite. Use of the search term approach shows each keyword many times to account for search terms branching out of it. I have 179K rows in this sponsored product report and 69K in the search term report. Yeah, that is an interesting note, which again, why I love these Q&As, because we get like insights into all the interesting questions, because there's seriously a large volume of questions when it comes to Amazon.
Yeah, Elizabeth, if you do find out the answer on that this afternoon, please let me know what it is.
Yeah, really no, I am intrigued now. Just if you have me intrigued. Yeah, so I mean, really,
we're going to be able to guess on your podcast here, but with the real data, you're going to get an answer.
Yeah, no, really, whenever we're faced with comparing reports, that's really what you have to do, is figure out where do the things match up and where the things not match up, and then that will typically lead you to the conclusions. The other interesting thing, and I'm trying to think what the documentation is whenever I'm faced with a new report where I don't understand. So for instance, when Search Query Performance Report first came out, or when I first started exploring Product Opportunity Explorer, there was some interesting things where I'm like, this doesn't, like, it's really weird. So for instance, Product Opportunity Explorer gives you search conversion rate. And I was looking at that. I'm like, some of these are 0. Like, how can that be 0? So whenever I don't understand anything, and I'm sure, Kevin, seeing as you work with the APIs, you do this a lot, is like, I don't understand it, go read documentation. Try and understand.
We do it a lot, and because we have a whole extra route for the data to take that we have to reconcile against everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have to understand like how it's calculated. And then if you figure out how it's calculated or surfaced, then that can lead you to, okay, this is the difference. This is how it applies. And these are the things that I can see apples to apples. Cool. This is a good question. What plays better in high ticket niches, creatives or PPC? If I get the top position organically, do I need to target the top of search? I assume you're asking, I mean, heck, if you can get the top position without ads, forget ads. Your product's crushing it. I know as an ad manager, I should probably say like, oh, you should always be running ads. I mean, if you can get away with no ad spend and make the sales that you want, I'll be honest, I would be out of a job. The only difference is that these days it's really hard to do that. I don't know if you have a different perspective on that, Kevin.
Well, I'd say a couple of things. I'm not sure from the question if they got the top position with or without ads, or if they just got the top organic position. That is amazing if you got the top organic position and you haven't run PPC at all. You don't need advice. Just have a good day and smile at yourself, because I've never heard of anyone succeeding at that. But if you did run ads to get there, a couple considerations. One is that you do need to maintain your place. You do need to maintain that position. And so if you don't run ads, your competitors will get those ad placements. And so you'll have a competing product on top of search. You'll have competing products everywhere. That might be fine if your product is so compelling that everyone's just buying your product anyway, and you don't even need to worry about defense. But it often makes sense to still spend some on brand defense. I mean, if you're getting that high organically, you probably just have great conversion rates. Just your ad stats will probably be fantastic anyway. And so for just a little spend, you probably can be running it like a single digit ACOS That said, obviously, if you're top of search organically and you pay to get top of search placement from PPC, you're going to have 2 copies of your product right next to each other. There's going to be a lot of cannibalization there where people were looking for your product anyway. So your ad stats may look fantastic, but the actual incremental value of having that top of search placement, those ad sales you're getting, a lot of them would have been organic.
Yeah.
But
and now that I'm reading the question, it might be that, I've already leveraged Amazon PPC to achieve the top position rank organically.
Yeah.
And then do I now need to target the top of search? If that is the question, typically speaking, no. And Kevin just touched on this. But if those sales top of search, that volume of sales is what you need to sustain that top spot, then yes, you will have to spend more for top of search because you won't be able to achieve that ranking without it. Now, if you can get away with not spending on that top of search, then absolutely save your ad dollars if you can. The answer to that question is really a test and see. And for us, we're never a huge fan of testing things suddenly and abruptly if we can get away with. So it's turn down the dial a little bit. So if you have a high top of search placement, maybe adjust it down slightly or lower your bids a little bit, just something to naturally sort of bring down that ad placement, and then track your sales, track your ranking. Am I okay? Am I not? And then you adjust. You adjust from there.
Yeah, and definitely you can take a look at your placement statistics. What you want to do to stay at the top organically is to have high sales velocity primarily. And so you can, if you see where your conversions are coming from and whether top and rest and product page placements and things like that, where is your velocity actually coming from? That'll give you an idea of whether it's very risky to your top placement to start letting top of search go to other people, or whether you're probably still going to drive the same sales velocity at a lower cost elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Here is a fun one that encompasses a lot more. So wrong one. I clicked. All right, there we go. Right one. So questions about getting brands ready for Prime Day. And Kevin, you're going to have a lot better perspective than me on things like deals and coupons. And I know you guys deal with tracking a lot of that. It's one thing actually I appreciate about the analytics of KPOC. There's a accounting section, and you can actually track what is your cost of running, because as we know, not everybody is going to redeem a coupon, but how many people are redeeming coupons and how is that cutting into your profit margins? There's a lot of really good insights into KPOC. But as far as Prime Day prep, because now's the time to ask the question. Now's the time to do it. How do you all advise brands going about that?
So there's a lot. This is a very broad question. There's a lot of elements to this. So I'll start with the advertising pieces on it. So if you have enough historical data that you can look back at historic Prime Days, it's a good idea to check what happened with conversion rates and just overall volume on those days, and make sure that you set the number one most important thing is budgets. The biggest impact of Prime Day is you're going to get a lot more volume. And so if you leave your budgets set at what they are on a normal day, you're going to go out of budget really early. You don't want to do that. You can calibrate this based on what happened in the past, but definitely expect that you're going to have multiple days of spend, all clustered into one day for Prime Day. Similarly, if you see higher conversion rates, it often makes sense to raise your bids. Now, definitely check if you have that, though. It really is category and situation dependent as to how big of a conversion rate bump you see. This is obvious, but inventory, make sure that you actually have sufficient inventory and that you're not going to stock out because of the additional demand. If you use a tool like KPOC, you can put in a forecast for that specific day for every item that will incorporate that. And if you're doing it manually, just do the same thing. You're going to have more. You're going to have more demand. You need to have the inventory for it, and definitely make sure it gets the warehouses in time. The FBA warehouses in time that it's actually going to be available on Prime Day, because the worst case scenario is you do a gigantic shipment and miss Prime Day, and then have all that inventory and then have to figure out how you're going to sell through it.
Yeah.
I'd say deals and coupons is a tricky one because it's really dependent on your particular economics.
Mhm.
But one thing that is valuable, I think, to look at is any tool that provides a customer lifetime value. In particular, you can look at actual customer lifetime value from customers that you got using deals on Prime Day and that sort of thing to analyze whether that's, because if you're doing a significant deal, that's going to obviously cut into your profit margin. You might even make it significantly negative for the first sale. So you want to make sure that your investment in getting a new customer there is actually paying off in getting you repeat customers. There's plenty of tools out there that does that. KPOC's one of them, but there's actually there's customer lifetime data in Seller Central too, to some degree. But that's definitely a good thing to look at to guide you as to whether it's worth it. And obviously the other piece is when you put a deal in, to measure that against places where you didn't put deals in, things like that. Try to figure out how much of a demand bump you're getting out of it. It's really, I think, a learning process there. And obviously, like, Prime Day is a great day for doing that and highlighting your product. You can get a lot of sales, but the caveats there are just to make sure it actually makes sense because you are giving up a lot of margin.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think to run is it Prime Day coupon or Prime Day deal to get that badge? Like, you can actually set those up last minute, but I think minimum is you have to put a 20% discount on those coupons. So, like, as Kevin said, make sure that that's not going to make you lose money, and through either the first sale or if you're looking at a lifetime value of shoppers. We have seen in terms of just like easy deals for clients to run. Those tend to do very well. When you run those, I think, what is it? There's like a checkbox or something you have to check to say, as long as you put the 20% in, you can get, again, even last minute, it can say like a prime, I want to say it's like a Prime Day discount or Prime Day deal. There's something that involves the word prime that's, very much like, oh, this is for Prime Day. And it does really help with shopper conversions. So in terms of deals, we've seen that work really well. There are bigger deals, which from my understanding, the cutoff dates for those have already passed to run those anyways, but those tend to be a little bit more expensive. You have to make sure you have inventory positions for them. They can really, really cut into margins sometimes. So you really want to be careful with that. And then exactly what Kevin said in terms of like the advertising, that's what we advocate for, is really just increasing budgets. We have heard of some agencies where they pretty much like, oh, just like entire bids, X percentage increase. And then, like everything gets raised. Like, that's not the way to do it. You want to be strategic and you want to base it on historical data, which is why now, when I said like now is the time. So if you're going to test anything, meaning like there's a new keyword that you wanted to test, you've been meaning to get up product targeting, you've been meaning to get up some sponsored brand ads, you really should start running, you should be running sponsored or defense ads, like all of the things that, like, oh, I really should be testing. I feel like this would be a distinct advantage. I would set up those campaigns now. Because what you really want to do is have enough data to say, I know these things work, which can take up to 3 weeks sometimes, honestly. And we're seeing that things to really get moving and starting to gain impressions and clicks takes longer than it used to, unless you're absolutely going crazy with bids out of the gate. That whole like start low, work your way up, like that's taking a lot longer to get like trained to leave the station these days. And so if you can have those, because what you're doing when you're going and increasing your budgets, again, same thing. I wouldn't like, oh, increase all of my campaign budgets across the board. Like if you have that one little test campaign in there that's been running at like 80% ACoS and your target's 30, like, do I want to spend more of my ad dollars at an 80% ACoS? Probably not. And so that's not going to be what I'm increasing. And so what we're doing is we're saying, okay, these are the things that we know work. And then those are the things that we put more ad budgets on, or potentially increase bids somewhat on those keywords. The other thing
that makes a lot of sense. I think it's an expensive day to test, just because if you put out news, say you put out a brand new thing on Prime Day and you have no idea how it'll perform, you're effectively cramming in a bunch of days into one day in terms of what the results are going to be. With the big difference that you're not going to really be able to respond as you get data in, because it's all compressed, and so. You'll react to it after the fact, but normally when you're testing, you get a few waves of initial data coming in, making adjustments. you definitely do not want the first day of that to be Prime Day, or that to be in the first week, like you said.
And the other thing to know, I don't think this is your first Prime Day, but if it is, and for anyone watching, if it's your first Prime Day, 2 to 3 days before Prime Day, sales will do this. The sales graph's going to go down. If this is your first go around, you're going to freak out about it. It sucks, but it's normal. And that's because conversion rates go down because everybody's waiting for the Prime Day deals. And you might get an increase of traffic or sessions, but that's not translating to sales. You might be like, what gives? It's not you, it's the market. So it's going to do that. And then you're going to have 2 big spike days, and then it's going to go back down again. And it typically takes at least, what is it like? Do you have any data on that? From my understanding, it's like 2 to 3 days to really recover, about 4 before it really starts. Obviously that varies by product, but that's been our observation. Like it takes a couple of days to chug back to like normal levels in terms of sales.
We do have data on that. I don't recall offhand the after Prime Day hangover length, but it's I don't know I can't remember if we've done it yet, but usually we put out a LinkedIn post that because we're a software platform, we can aggregate data across all of our customers and get pretty high fidelity, like lots of data in these things to figure out answers to questions like that. So before any of the tentpole events, we'll usually put out a little report on our LinkedIn that says, hey, this is what happens to conversion rates, this is what happens to sales, so that our customers and followers can get the benefit of all that aggregate data for figuring out what might happen to them, especially if they don't have tons of data going far back or want to see how they compare to averages and things like that.
Awesome. When you guys do that, make sure you have your creative team tag me because I want to read that.
Will do.
Awesome. So Kim has a good question, and I know you get super mathematical with it, and Kevin literally wrote the algorithm on how their tool recommends these. But she was saying, hey, how do you go and reevaluate placement percentages? The majority of mine have increased what I thought was the single best performer by 10%. Not sure how to give a zero baseline to review, as do you. Adjust for 2 different positions, best performer, and leave worst at 0.
Yeah, so this is a great question, and it's a tricky answer. So starting with the placement report. So if you take the data down for each placement, and I'll assume we're talking sponsored products here. So we have product page, rest of search, and top of search. So yeah, in general, you do see higher conversion rates from top of search by a small amount, but it can really vary based on product. It's likely, I don't think there's a way to like actually get data on this, but I'm assuming that a big part of that is top of search is more important for mobile. So if you take a look at that report, what you want to do if you're not trying to do anything weird and all you're trying to do is get the most efficient placements, what you want to do there is set your placement percentages such that your effective bid at each placement is set at the same level relative to revenue per click. However, I'm going to give a giant caveat there. So what that would do is make it so if you get twice as many conversions at top of search, say, and so you get much revenue per click, then your bid would be twice as high for top of search, which mathematically makes sense. There's a huge caveat on this, though, that if you're looking at the placement report, it's at the campaign level. And so just because your conversion rate is twice as high on the top of search as it is on rest of search does not mean that at each individual keyword that's true. What often happens is your most relevant keywords within the campaign, you're bidding them up. Amazon thinks they're higher relevancy. You get top of search placements more often on those. And then on your less relevant, lower conversion rate keywords, you get it less. And so if you go in there and you just base it on the placement report, you're going to overcorrect in most cases, especially the biggest ones are if you have branded and non-branded search terms in the same campaign, because then the effect can get huge. So I'd say look at that placement report, try to look at the ratios of revenue per click between each of the placements. Make sure you have enough data in there because if you have to make sure you have enough at each placement or it gets hairy. But once you do that, definitely don't go as far as it's telling you to go with that, and I don't have a great answer to this, but base it on how much dispersion there is in conversion rates between different targets. One really nice thing about the marketing stream is that the data in the marketing stream actually breaks out performance by placement at the target level. And so in the future, I anticipate that we're going to be able to put out some nice data for that to help people calibrate it. But for now, I think it's qualitative judgment there, unless you got a better way, Elizabeth.
No, that's Kevin's way is way more systematic. I don't want to say data driven because it's not like ours isn't. So there's two ways to do it, right? It's like extremely, which is going to get you to the best answer the quickest. I think if you're really looking to leverage placements, another way to do it, if that makes your head spin, still use placement percentage, like placement reports. It's going to be a really good way to, look across all of your campaigns and then see, which can be very, very helpful, because especially if you know that you're advertising the same product and the same type of keyword somewhere else, sometimes you can also use one campaign's data to sort of roll up and figure out something for another campaign. It's not the greatest way to do it, but if you needed to really figure something out, you could. So there's the more, formulaic approach, which would be what Kevin was outlining very, very well. But the other way is if you're like, I don't know, is it working? No, lower it. Is it not? Is it really working? Yes, increase it. And if you wanted to do a little bit, again, a little bit less formulaic about it, you could do it incrementally, which just means increase by X. X to me is probably about 5 to 10%, maybe even lower than that, which is fairly similar. If you wanted to super simplify it. But Kevin's
definitely on that note, I'd avoid making them jump really hard unless you're going to keep a really close eye on it afterwards. One nice thing about doing something like putting 100% top of search in there is that it'll move the results really fast. You'll get a lot more top of search and it'll be very visible, which is great if you're going to do it for a few days and then undo it and you're okay with doing that as an experiment, but is not great if you set it and then forget it and then leave it there for 2 months. So the incremental works a lot better that way. I guess it is a trade-off having a jump around like that. But at the same time, the one other thing I'd say that I've seen people do is, there's pluses and minuses to this, but you can also run separate campaigns for each placement, especially now that there's a rest of search modifier, and put in a pretty big top of search modifier with the intent that your campaign that you're running that modifier on is effectively your top of search campaign, and will only have top of search placements, and then some other campaign you do the opposite for rest of search for a product page and try to isolate those. And then you get the data fully separately. Obviously big downside there is now you have 3 times as many campaigns and keywords and stuff to run bids on. You have to run weird looking bids because you're increasing them so much. And sometimes you're in some cases, you might even run into problems with the min bid you've set if you're using a PPC tool. So there's definitely more complication there, but that definitely is the way to get the most data. And know that you got the right ratios of bids on the things.
Yeah. That approach, again, if you want super formulaic in the weeds, but like Kevin said, you better keep on top of that strategy, because there is high potential for those strategies to overlap and stuff to cross if you're controlling it very well.
Yeah, that definitely is playing on hard mode. You better be watching.
I like that, playing on hard mode. That was awesome. Here's another good question. Joseph is asking, how long should I look back when analyzing PPC performance? I'll give the simplistic answer, and then Kevin, I know you guys deal with multivariation look back windows and stuff. Like I said, Kevin wrote the bid algorithm, so he'll have a lot of nuances on that. But then the other part of the question was, how long does it take for Amazon to count for all clicks for sponsored product and sponsored brand ads? From my understanding, clicks are pretty frequently updated. I know it's typically the orders that take the longest to update. Is that correct? Am I wrong on that?
Yeah. So if you pull a report the next day, all the clicks have already happened. Now, I'll put an asterisk on that in a second, whereas the orders, you got to wait for the attribution window. Now, that said, you will see clicks and orders even after the attribution window is closed. you'll see those numbers move around. And that's because Amazon makes corrections to them. So usually what it means is that they're invalidating clicks for things like being a bot that they found later and things like that. But if you want it to be absolutely spot on, you definitely want to pull the report again later and save it down. But clicks, you're going to be pretty close, even if I shouldn't. It depends on what time the next day, because the reports are also they have some leg to them. But if you pull the report like 2 days later, you should be pretty safe that you've captured all the clicks. Definitely for orders, you're going to want to pull it again, because you'll get it's something like only 70% of the orders happen in the first day of attribution, or I think it's 75 actually. So there's material differences over time on that. Clicks is mostly just the correction thing and making sure you pulled it long enough that Amazon actually has put all of the data into the report that you're looking at. Because that does not happen at 12:01 a.m. the next day. That there's definitely some latency there.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the look back windows, I think our typical look windows is like 7 to 14 days. Again, 7 days sponsor product orders attribution, 14 days sponsor brand and display. So that's giving you a relatively good idea. A 30-day look back window. It depends on what you're trying to figure out. Like, are you trying to look at historical trends? Are you trying to snapshot of now, right? Which would kind of vary based on what you're trying to find. Other things that we do look at, although, on the first and second day of the month, it's less informative than, say, like 2 weeks in, month to date data, just to kind of see like, hey, how are we trending for this month? But again, if we're first day of the month, that's going to be less than useless because there's no data to look at. So, but Kevin, I know you guys look at multiple date ranges, and you guys have a lot of date ranges analysis in your tool. So.
Yeah. So, well, first off, I'd say that it's tricky to answer this question directly, like give like a single answer to it, because there's a couple moving parts here. One of them is, what are you trying to do? So it's a kind of different answer for, am I trying to set bids based on this data versus am I trying to analyze PPC performance and I just want to see, like, did my performance go down? Like, is my date range big enough? In either case, though, one big important part of this question is how dense your data is. So if you're spending a lot and you have tens of thousands of clicks a day, you're effectively getting a lot more data each day than if you have 25 clicks a day, which counts at whatever level you're analyzing it on. So if you just want to know, is my account am I actually just like getting worse or better performance as an account period over period? What you're doing at the account level matters. If you're trying to compute what bids you should be running or move your bids up and down, it actually matters how much data you have at the target level. And so it gets there you really do, to get a good answer from scratch anyway, you'd have to have a longer look back window at the target level for sure. And really, I mean, we all know how targets work. You'll have a few targets that are your big ones, and then a really long tail of targets that don't get much traffic. This is not a fun answer here, because I don't know how as a human you could ever do this, but the real answer is that you want to run different lookbacks based on the amount of data in the data set that you're looking at there. So you would want to effectively be looking back farther for each target that has a smaller amount of data. And obviously, like, once you have computers that can do that, it becomes much easier. So we use the entire data set available to us and just weight the more recent data more highly. And that weighting is dependent on how much data density there is. I don't think there's a way for a human to like manually pull down reports and get anything.
No, my head would spin. I know when we were just discussing, like, because the one thing I appreciate about your tool is you guys are really open with your calculations, like how this is actually how we calculate, which is really refreshing sometimes in this space. So I know you're like discussing all the nuances. I'm like, okay, that seems intense.
Yeah, I know that's I know that answer is a little bit too impossible to implement unless you're actually pulling data from the API yourself and storing it down. Really, you need to have daily data for all of your targets and to write some code that does it. But I think the general idea of you want your look back window, what you really want to be doing under the hood is looking at more recent data with higher weight and having that amount of higher weight be based on how much data you have. So that can probably guide you to how far your look back window should be. And I think Elizabeth is right, like 30 days for things that have a decent amount of data. Because I'm sure, Elizabeth, when you pull a 30-day report, you're not going to be making decisions on parts of that where like the thing got 3 clicks in those 30 days. So there's a filter already going on in there. If you wanted to do those, if you want to be like, oh, I'm going to refresh all my long tail bids or something like that, you're going to need to be getting more data in there somehow. And extending the window is really the only way I can think of to do that.
Yeah, that is so the more manual approach that we use, and then we'll hop to the next. I think we can bang out the next questions pretty quickly. But we look at shorter date ranges for the things that have enough clicks on them to make a decision, which is typically about 14-day window. So this is like, hey, this is what's happening right now. And then what we do is we zoom out to a longer date range, which is like 30, sometimes even 60 days, to say what are the things that have here we're specifically looking for clicks with no sale things, or things that have low amounts of orders, really high A costs, lots of clicks on them when we zoom out to a longer date range. So there will be things, if you're looking at a shorter date range, like Kevin was said, there's not enough clicks to really make a decision on those, where if you looked at longer date ranges, you would be able to catch those things. So you do want to make sure you're careful that you're not like adjusting off a shorter window and then adjusting off a longer window. So you want to figure out like where there might be some overlap and then just eliminate those targets. But that's kind of how, because they're recognizing this date range, it's very dynamic. And so when we had to do things a little bit more manually, that was our approach, is kind of like ideally get the best of both worlds. It's not as dynamic as what Kevin's talking about, but at least you can kind of hedge your losses, I guess, would be a way to say that. Yeah,
that makes tons of sense. You should not be as dynamic as a computer program is, because you'd probably spend all day setting one bid.
Yeah, no, for sure. This is a really good question. Unless Kevin, you have, because I know we work with apparel clients. I don't know if you've pulled data specifically on this category, but we'll answer it real quick. So the question is, what is considered a good conversion rate in women's apparel? Off the top of my head, and this is not doing data analysis, this is just like laundry list of all the times we worked with the clients and what does kind of those conversion rates look like. I'm thinking, quote, good would be like a 5%, 5 to 2%, I think is pretty common. It does depend slightly on like the category, the competition, how many options somebody for example, like you're selling black leggings. Everybody and their mother has black leggings, so your conversion rate's probably a little bit lower. If you have a really differentiated style that's hot in the market that nobody else has right now, your conversion rate is going to be a lot higher. So take that with a grain of salt. And then the other thing I would say is you're going to have what I'm going to tell you, but what really is going to tell you what's a quote good conversion rate is going to be your market. And for that, I'm going to plug one of our videos. So if you go over to our YouTube channel, the thumbnail says Spy on Competitors, and it's 2 free game-changing tools to analyze competitor conversion rates. I would check that video. I go over using brand analytics and search query report to specifically look at your competition's conversion rate and then chalk that up against your conversion rate. That's going to be your biggest comparator, because it's really going to be different. And if you can't find that video, let me know. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll make sure you get that link.
And I do not have a better answer than that, Elizabeth.
Okay.
That was really comprehensive.
Cool. Here's a good one. And I only know this because I'm in some mastermind groups and somebody just asked this question. But Eddie was asking, how do you fix the star in search terms on sponsored brand campaigns? I actually surprisingly have a very direct answer for this. So if you don't mind, Kevin, I'll just answer real quick.
Oh, go for it.
According to what I know, that is actually a placeholder for instances where the impressions are served outside of physical search terms, such as like homepage or detail pages. And what I was told is that the product team is working on like a better user experience. So instead of an asterisk, to like figure out some way to differentiate that. But currently that's what's going to appear in the search term reports. And you are asking about it. So that's why it's happening. Unfortunately, I don't have a fix to you. The fix is going to have to come from Amazon. So
yeah, that said, the primary uses for the search term report are keyword harvesting, understanding what customers are searching.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get more color if they fix that. but it's not like you have a problem where you're missing out on things that you should be harvesting or something like that. I guess if you try to harvest the asterisk, it won't work. So you're even safe there, actually. So I think just knowing what it is the important thing there. It'll obviously be. I don't even know what you do with that color if they split it out and give you more detail. But I mean, I'm sure put it on a report and people will talk about it once and then. But I don't know what actions to take. But maybe people will come up with something.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see kind of what we got. Dang, we got so many good questions. Are you a hard and fast 1 o'clock?
Oh no, I am not.
Okay, I will try not to. We will see how many questions we can get to. I won't keep you too long, but we got some good ones. So question is, do you guys use automation tools for PPC? If so, which ones would you recommend? Well,
I know what I'd recommend. Yeah.
This is side of the screen. K-pop, like Kevin was alluding to, like their look back windows and how they do it. It's a revenue per click model. It is really nuanced. And again, my thing with any bid automation tool, I'm not a fan of anything that is a black box that says, hey, turn it on and we'll do our thing and, just input an ACOS and I'm not going to tell you what it does. The reason why is because it's really hard to understand the application of like the outline use cases for it. And sometimes the tool does great and sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you don't know why. And when it does, you don't know why. And so the thing I really appreciate about the K-pop tool, one, I just think that the bid algorithm is really solid. And then the second thing is they're very transparent about the calculations. And like you can literally in the tool pop open and it will tell you exactly why the calculations are doing what it is. So if there's some reason why something's not getting calculated the way that you want, you know how to put in the inputs to make it do what you would like it to do. And there's also like fail safes in there where you can test the bid automations, but still have the pushes be like manual. So it'll calculate it for you and you can elect to do that just, to get yourself familiar with the tool and how it calculates and like make adjustments if you need to. So definitely recommend that. Outside of that, I would say you really need to make sure that whatever tool that you are using aligns with how you would like to implement strategy. So like I said, we're already loving and using K-pop anyways, just for the analytics portion. And then we're also working on, fully integrating with our ads automation as well. We used internal tools for the longest time. And as we're growing and as we've seen just validity for the results that K-pop's bid algorithm has, we're working on leveraging that even more these days. But again, because we know the tool, because we trust the tool and we know how to make it work and it aligns with our philosophies and how we do things, regardless of the tool, you need to make sure. So K-pop has the ads portion. They also have a strong analytics. That was really important to us. So we can understand what's going on with the brand because ads touch everything and everything touches ads. There are good tools out there. I know Scale Insights is a good one. That one, you set every single nuance of the rule. So the options of being super manual, super custom are awesome. That also means you have to set up everything super manual and super custom. So if you don't know what you're doing there, you're going to go in saying, this is the best thing in the world and I can customize everything. And then you're going to look at the dashboard and be like, oh shoot, I got to customize everything. So if that's your game, if you're like, I have these very specific things I want done and I want a tool to run those, that's going to be a great option for you. But if that's not the way you prefer to manage things, you're not going to like it. Other ones, I know, if you're really into AMC or other ones, there's other tools that's their strong suit. So it's figure out what makes sense within how you work, who you want to partner with, and then just make sure you find the tool that aligns with it that's going to do what you want it to do and the way you want it to do it. Because I'll be honest, there's a lot of options out there. We just found one we aligned with. All right.
Yeah, I know what I would recommend there, so I think I'll just let Elizabeth do the talking.
For sure.
You guys can guess too.
But yeah, so this is a good question. From my understanding, the answer is no. He was saying if sales are coming through Amazon posts, is it counted on the PPC sales? And does it get calculated in the ACOS? So sales will get calculated in terms of business reports. I don't believe they get calculated in the ads because they're not technically advertising, unless I'm wrong on that.
I think you're right. I don't know what would happen if someone actually purchased through Amazon Post and they previously clicked on an ad though, because you have the last click attribution, but I doubt that going through that invalidates it. So I'd assume that, I mean, that's a pretty interesting customer journey, but I think I would think that would actually count as an ad attributed sale if they did that. But that's I do not know the true answer to that question.
Yeah. My understanding is no, because it's not like something you're actually bidding on and clicking on. It's not generated through the ad console. There is data you can pull for posts specifically that show what is it, orders and conversions and things.
Oh, I was thinking more like, imagine they clicked a sponsored product ad, didn't buy it, and then later went through Amazon Posts and bought it during the attribution window. I'm pretty sure that would get counted. But I would, because just like you say, it's not everything. All of your data that comes back from PPC gets attributed to individual targets, really, and so there would be nowhere to put it.
Yeah, no, definitely. All right, Joseph, this one you will know more, Kevin. He's asking about accessing to Amazon Marketing Stream and what's the biggest advantage of having it.
So Amazon Marketing Stream does a few things. One is that it gives you data back in closer to real time. That I feel like is more of a quality of life thing, where you can see the data update really fast, and doesn't really have much material impact for how you'd manage things, because you can't really react that quickly to changes. Even like you can move around the bids in theory, but it's not going to matter much. The big advantages of it are data granularity. So I mean, there is a big advantage for developers if it's just like they push the things to you instead of you having to pull reports over and over again. But throw that one out for a user that just wants the data. When you pull reports, when you pull advertising reports from Amazon, normally you only get a full day of data as your aggregation unit. So you can be like, how did this keyword do last Friday, and get each individual day. The marketing stream breaks it up by hour of day, which that means that you can actually run day parting based on real actual data instead of assumptions. That's probably the single biggest one. There's two other ways in which it's more granular. One is that for every stat that you get back, it'll actually tell you the placement that particular keyword had. So your stats are broken up by placement at the hour level too. And then one that was always a frustrating report to do is linking up your keyword level ad stats to the individual products. It allows you to do that too, because it'll break out the stats based on what product was served in the ad. Obviously, that's for that's sponsored products, sponsored display, sponsored brands is a whole other beast there. Although you get the other benefits from the sponsored brands ones, but you still have there's no way a stream is going to solve the problem of you have 3 ads in your creative. How do you, or your 3 products in your creative? How do you attribute it? Or you went to the storefront?
Yeah, eventually, I don't know. I have my doubts if they're ever going to give us product level data on sponsored brands, like spend broken out by product on brands. We'll see. We'll see if they ever give us that.
Oh, and I just realized we didn't answer the first part of his question. How does he get access to it? So you can access, obviously you can like write up code to take the stream in directly from Amazon using an AMS queue and all that. If you're asking that question, I doubt you want to do that. You basically have to have stuff running all the time to pull in messages that Amazon's pushing onto a queue. It's a pretty heavy dev lift. The actual size of the data is pretty big too, so you have to really be comfortable with it's not something you're going to save down in CSV for most accounts. You have to actually have a real database backend and things like that if you want to use the data. So what I'd recommend there is find a software tool that's already doing it. So we're one of those. So if you do that, we listen to the data, and then you can see the data within KPOC, and also. And we're not the only ones that listen to the Amazon marketing stream by any measure. You can Google and there'll be a bunch out there. But also we do provide a backend that you can use to directly hook up, say Looker into it, or it's any other it's kind of up to the end user. It's just a standard query language backend, but it hooks seamlessly into Looker, so you can get the data there without having to worry about warehousing it yourself. Because warehousing this data is definitely more of a technical challenge than something like, say, like pulling reports over and over again and saving them down or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, with larger data comes larger storage and more data, more problems. So definitely. Eddie has a quick question. I'll answer it. Eddie was asking, have you noticed video ads exact performing like broad? Yes, absolutely. So I stopped sharing my screen. I'm going to pull up my screen again because I have Amazon's page on how they define their match types. Like, I have it saved as a link on my bookmarks because they change it so often these days. And that is one of the things that changed. I actually put a post on LinkedIn. I basically said, so match types don't matter in sponsored brands anymore. I mean, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's honestly kind of true. So if you look at their definition for exact match, it says in sponsored brand campaigns, this match type allows advertisers to show searches that have meaning or the same intent on their keywords. For example, if an advertiser has an exact keyword outside lights and customer queries outdoor lights, an exact match occurs. And it's not always as specific as outside lights, outdoor lights. It's often quite different than the examples that they give. So the quick answer is yes. And only for sponsored brand ads, add negatives to exact matches now. Go figure. Wild world we live in. Let's see. Got a lot of these. We're already 7 minutes out. We did have one specifically. Somebody was asking about a KPOC strategy. So I'm going to throw you in here. Kevin's good at answering these ones, although I know we're putting him on the spot here. Omar was asking, he was saying, best way to get more aggressive on spend for a campaign that has a good ROAS, but within an ad strategy, bid automation. What happens if I manually increase bids? Will it just roll back quick or slow? What happens if I apply more aggressive top of search bid modifiers? Or should I decrease the ROAS target for the strategy? He said for KPOC. So it sounds to me like it's an automation in KPOC.
Yeah, so we're going to get really in the KPOC weeds here because some of these are definitely KPOC specific answers. So if you manually increase bids in the console, they will get overwritten. It depending on whether you're running day parting, it'll either get overwritten on the hour or the next day when bids go out. If you don't have full automation on, it'll be the next time you approve a new bid. But so you can actually do that if you just want to move a bid around for a short period of time, and reverting is a feature for you. But generally, that's not the right way to do it. If you apply a more aggressive top of search bid multiplier, so that if we didn't adjust our bids for that would certainly make you more aggressive. But in fact, we do, because you have a ROAS target in there. And so if we didn't take that into account, it would increase your effective bid for top of search. Your ACOS would go up a little bit, and you'd get more volume. But in reality, what we'll do is see that you did that, adjust for it, and make the bid a little lower. And so what it'll really do is it'll divert some spend from rest of search and product pages towards top of search without increasing your overall aggression level at all. So that's probably not what you're looking for either. Really, I know it's a really simple answer, but your last one I think is the right answer. If you want to get more aggressive on spend, usually the answer, and you already are happy with the ROAS, usually the answer is to decrease your ROAS target / increase your ACOS target, and that'll just make all of your bidding more aggressive there. There's a couple other exceptions to this that really revolve around keyword testing. So if you have a lot of untested keywords in there that you want, because you can get more aggressive on spend by bidding up the existing things that you're surfacing on more, getting higher share, lighting up some of the marginal ones. Or you can get more aggressive by finding new keywords that are that you haven't found out if are performing well or not. Usually the second strategy is more expensive at the beginning, but it kind of expands the pool that you can advertise on. If you have a lot of that, you can either make sure you're harvesting keywords in the first place into there, And then if you want to push regression there, you can raise the initial conversion rate instead of the A-glass target. And sorry for everyone that doesn't run PPC on KPOC. That was a very specific KPOC question from Omar.
Yeah, no, that actually, that's one of the things I appreciate about the tool. Again, you guys are really transparent with how it works. And we're like, if I want to do this, how do I do that? And Kevin will get on there and be like, this is exactly how I would do that, if that's your thing you want to achieve. So I appreciate the transparency. Omar says, awesome. Thank you. Yes, of course. We appreciate it. Sada is saying amazing. Thanks. And Ryan is here. What's up, Liz and Kevin? One last thing. I know we have 2 other questions in the chat. Kim and Dante, we're about 10 minutes out. So what I'm going to do is I see what platforms you guys are listening on. I'm going to go find those questions. I'll give you a custom Loom answer so I can make sure everybody gets answered. But we had a GM-packed questions today. And Joseph is back with an answer to our original query. He said, now I see I have a discrepancy in the search term reports because this tab doesn't include rows with 0 spend, whereas the sponsored product includes anything as long as it has impressions. That's interesting.
So I think I don't remember what the number is right now, but I believe there's a floor on that. And it's not just anything that has 1 impression. Although Joseph probably can know that answer right now just by finding the lowest number of impressions in there. But I've used to know that number. Now I don't. But I don't think it's anything with 1 impression. There's some like significance threshold for them to include it.
Awesome.
Although if they had 0 about it, that you definitely would get a lot of interesting search terms to take a look at when you decide whether to harvest things.
Yeah, that is really true. I'm gonna have to go check search term tab now. I feel like I'm gonna get a lot of value out of that. Kim is saying, thanks, Liz and Kevin, and get a lot of value spending time watching videos. We appreciate it, and thanks for calling us smart. It makes us feel good. No, we just feel good now, yeah. I feel like what is it? Is it the State Farm meme where it's like, and we know a lot of things because we've seen a lot of things. It feels like if you're in the game long enough, you see enough stuff, you figure out enough things. So really, things just take time. And so our goal here is to pass on whatever learnings we've gained through most of the time painful learning experiences. Hopefully we can shortcut your all's ad journey. So with that, we really appreciate it. And Kevin, we appreciate you coming on. If anyone is very intrigued by KPOC, I assume the website is the best place for
yeah, and just because weird name, it's KAPOQ.com.
Yes. So definitely go check them out. You can get in touch with their team. Maybe talk to Kevin if you have any bid questions. And yeah, so with that, we appreciate it. We will be here next week, Thursday, same time, same place, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a whole hour of answering your Amazon ad questions. So feel free to join us next week. And we appreciate you. Thanks, guys.